déranger d'intégrer, s'il vous plaît. D'abord, est-ce que vous aimeriez que je lise les instructions en français ou en anglais?
English, please.
Welcome at the 2016 Financial Open. Before we begin, would you confirm that you are team letter G?
Yes.
I remind you that you have a maximum of 20 minutes for your presentation, followed by a 5 minutes question session. I will impose the remaining time using these indicators at the 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds. At the last 10 seconds on my fingers. I will start the timer when you're begin. You can start whenever you are.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. We are representing AZ Bank. My teammates Allison, Catherine, and myself, Christiana. We are here to present an investment strategy to Mr. François Normando. So our mandate today is to assist Mr. François Normando in concerning certain objectives that he wants to focus on. First of all, we want to help him evaluate the investment needs for the Normando family. Secondly, we want to assess Mr. Normando's current asset allocation and sector allocation and suggest improvements. Thirdly, we want to choose a portfolio manager that meets Normando investment needs. And third of all, we want to hedge the steel price volatility risk. Our recommendation for Mr. François Normando is to maintain the current portfolio but reduce the cash allocation to 3%. We would suggest you to keep the manager number 4. And in addition, we would suggest you to use a butterfly spread to hedge the steel risk that you're exposed to. And now I will pass on to Allison. It will walk you through the analysis of the company and of the investment portfolio.
Okay, so to start with a company overview, we would like to start with the certain characteristics of the company. So we know that it is a farm equipment company, but it also has seasonality because it has snow removal equipment. So therefore it's able to remain profitable all year round because it has both summer stuff as well as equipment for the winter. Now, in terms of a competitive advantage, it does have a very long history, and its beginning was established in the 19th century. Therefore, it has management from previous years and understands how its operations work. And they also have an international reach, and they are currently located in Canada, the US, and in Russia. Now, in terms of their future plans, they are looking to expand into Scandinavian countries. Now, there are certain risks inherent in the business. Of course, that is the oil prices. That could affect their transportation across the countries that they're involved in. Also, the steel prices, which are very important to them, and the current economic goings on in Russia with the annexation of the other country and just the turmoil going on in Russia might affect them, considering that they have substantial business going on there. Now, in order to ensure their expansion plans into the Scandinavian countries, it is very important that they hedge their risks, especially in the steel prices. Now, if we go over the Normando's personal finances, we have both François and Andrea. We know that François is the CEO of his company, and he does have a significant stake in the company, currently at 75%. However, he does plan on reducing the stake to 40% over the next 10 years by allocating his portion to his son. He is currently 60 years old, and he would like to retire by the age of 65. Now, he did say that he has minimal investment knowledge, considering that he's put significant work into his company and hasn't had time to look up financials. Now, his wife, on the other hand, she is 59 and she is already retired. And she has some charitable goals in the future. She would like to build an organization that will help youths with learning disabilities. She, on the other hand, she does actually understand the risks inherent in investing in the stock market and the risks of different types of investments, unlike her husband. Now, the entire family does stress that they enjoy a family-oriented culture. They do mention that they would like to give all their portions in the company to their children upon when they pass, and therefore we have decided to maintain their current money at the same level because we figured that they would like to give their family a significant inheritance. pass it off to Catherine, who will discuss part of the execution.
So, as a return objective for the portfolio, we would target a 4.66% return. In terms of risk tolerance, as they want to leave an inheritance money to their kids, we stress a capital preservation strategy. In terms of liquidity needs, they mentioned that their dividend income covers all of their expenses. In terms of time horizon, as they are retiring as François is retiring in 5 years, we forecasted all expenses over 25 years. As for tax concerns, investment income from the company is taxed at the highest bracket as they are high net worth individual. But a non-profit organization does benefit from some tax credits. In terms of constraints, François mentioned that he did not want to invest in any emerging market or any unstable economy. So currently, we have made the assumption that François had a net worth of $20 million. And to achieve Andrea's expenses goals for her organization, we forecasted 4% the expenses in the years to reflect a very conservative inflation. Now, to meet the organization expenses, the current net worth of François should grow at 4.66%. So this is the first goal that our portfolio has. Second goal, we want to address the currency risk and address the tax advantage of a certain allocation. So now we need to revisit the current portfolio allocation. I will let Alison talk about the different expenses and how we projected that.
Okay, so in terms of expenses, since the interest income coming from the company does cover all their normal expenses, and Monsieur Normando does explicitly state that he does like to lead a simple lifestyle and will not be overspending, we decided to forecast only the organization's expenses. Now, that organization is the charitable organization that Mrs. Normando would like to start for children with learning disabilities. Now, she did expect that the annual average expense would be $250,000. However, she does believe that government contributions will be $100,000 of that $250,000. Therefore, we projected $150,000 throughout the years at the rate of inflation. Now, if you bring that back, we brought it back to the current time, and we do believe that she needs to have a 4.66% return in order to cover these expenses, while also maintaining the $20 million value of the current portfolio. So therefore, instead of a 4% return, which we previously considered that they were having, we decided that this 4.66 would be able to meet these expenses and keep their current $20 million. Now I will pass it off to Catherine, who will discuss the asset allocation.
So currently, the portfolio is divided between fixed income, equities, alternative, and cash. So you have 32.5% in fixed income that is yielding 1.7%. Equities at 47.5% yielding a 5.9% return. And we assume that alternatives were yielding at 10%. Now you have to, our main concern with this current allocation is the cash portion. 15% is a very high weight towards cash, considering the very low returns associated with them. And currently, considering that the portfolio will be yielding 4%, the IPS needs are not necessarily met. So we want to take that cash and make it work for the Normando's family. Yes, exactly. So the current equity allocation is divided as follows. So 52% in American equities, 36% in Canadian equities, and the rest in international equities and in ETF. So considering that 52% is in US, while it's only yielding or expected to yield 5%, we think that there's a better way to allocate this capital. Furthermore, there are no investment in emerging markets. So we consider that the current capital allocation is inefficient, considering the potential returns that you could generate. So the new portfolio suggested basically takes a portion of the cash and puts it towards Canadian equities. So here you see how you had, well, there was a 15% allocation towards cash. Now we have reduced this to 3%, and this capital is now going to be shifted towards Canadian equities. The reason why we thought this was a good solution is because it decreases the currency risk. By having a higher weight in foreign markets, the cost of bringing back the capital whenever you want to cash the different securities can be pretty high. There's a risk associated to it. So by allocating a higher weight towards Canadian equities, we decrease this risk. Furthermore, there are some tax advantages associated with investing in Canadian equities in Canada. So we want to take full advantage of these. Furthermore, we want to change the ETF that is invested in the international equities, but only slightly. Basically, we want to switch the MSCI for the MSCI ESG. Basically, this ETF puts a higher weight on companies that are score really well on the ESG score tables, and an underweight on the ones that score low. And the goal of this is that in the next few years, there are going to be some new regulations addressing the different climate change, and the companies that are scoring well are going to be well equipped to have less carbon tax, for instance, or take advantage of tax credits. That said, we think it's going to be a good investment for you. The new portfolio will yield a 4.75 return, which exceeds the IPS required return of 4.66. Now, in terms of sector allocation, currently we're very overweight in financials, underweight in energy, overweight in materials. Our biggest concern is your exposure to the financials. Especially this is the Canadian sector allocation. And banks in Canada have a lot of exposure to oil because oil is a big part of our economy. That said, we want to reduce the exposure to financials, and as a general guideline, maybe invest more in banks that have an exposure to the US, for instance, where the market is actually still growing and in a very good shape. Also, we want to benchmark the energy, because we think that right now there are some very good opportunities considering that the markets are very depressed. So even the really good companies in energy are probably really penalized because of the investor sentiment. So we want to have a higher weight towards, let's say, refineries, which who are not as visible from the oil prices than the E&Ps, for instance. Also, we want to increase the staples as we're currently underweight, and this would offer more stability to your portfolio. And as you have a very conservative profile, this may be a good option for you. Also, we want to increase the information technology as this industry is constantly growing, and we're currently underweight on this. So basically, we want to rebalance the Canadian sector allocation to reflect the current market environment. So before, your portfolio was yielding 4%, and the target return was 67. Basically, you were not necessarily meeting your needs. Secondly, the currency risk. 62% of equities were in foreign markets, which is a very high exposure to the currency risk. And the tax advantages, there was only 38% in Canadian equities, So you were not taking full benefit of those tax advantages that comes with investing with Canadian equities. Now, the new portfolio yields a return of 4.75, so you meet that IPS requirement. Furthermore, 50% of equities are now in Canadian markets, and by having more of the domestic equities, basically reduces that risk. Thirdly, there is 50% in Canadian equities, which also increases the tax advantages that you can benefit from. So now the proposed asset allocation is much more in line with the IPS requirements. Now I'll pass it on to Alison, who will discuss the different managers that we can hire.
Okay, so in terms of portfolio managers, there are 4 to choose from to manage Mr. Normando's portfolio. We opted to go with portfolio manager number 4. First of all, we did want a bottom-up strategy, and only managers 3 and 4 were offering that. In terms of numbers, he did have a higher alpha of 1%. He did have a lower beta of 0.4%. And the volatility was 12.3% lower than that of manager 3. Now, in terms of the track record, manager 4 did display a greater track record, that of 12 years, compared to manager 3 had a track record of 3 years. And the only drawback we saw was that the firm's age was only 12 years compared to 16 years, but we believe that this was mitigated by his better track record of 12 years on 12 years. Also, if you see in terms of stock selection, he is much better than manager 3. Now, okay, so, and also this manager 4 will help us achieve the 4.66% return that we do desire. Okay, now I'll pass it off to Christian.
So let me walk you through the risk management now and come back to the business. We know that we are producing equipment for agricultural business that needs steel to be manufactured. However, we believe that the steel price will increase in the future, and we want to hedge this risk. We need to replenish in 7 months. We need 100,000 tons of steel. And since we also expect the winter having light precipitation and summer rainy weather, the steel price is expected to increase, but we need to hedge the steel price risk. In order to achieve this objective, we are thinking to use options, derivatives, for a cash settlement per ton of iron in USD, so in American dollar. The key consideration for using the cash settlement would be to avoid the obligation to buy the iron. So in a normal situation when you're using derivatives, you would make a profit by buying or selling that specific underlying asset. However, here, instead of exchanging the asset, you are just exchanging the cash profit or loss that you pocket or you will have to give to the seller of the derivative. In addition, we want to take advantage of the depreciated Canadian dollar. So given that the profit that we expect to have by using these derivatives is in US dollar, converted into Canadian will be translated in a higher profit. So let me walk through the decision criteria for choosing the best option. Is the potential return in the event of price depreciation. We expect that the iron price will decrease, will be around $55 and $60 per ton. In addition, one protection against the iron price appreciation. We do not believe that the iron price will appreciate, so we want just to protect against an eventual increase, and we want to protect against volatility. So let me walk you through all the alternatives that we considered. So the first one is future. Engage in 100 future contracts of $60 ton of iron. The parties settle by paying and receiving a loss and gain related in the contract cash when the contract expires. However, we believe since the price of the iron is expected to decrease, that we will incur a loss of approximately $70,000 in Canadian. The second option would be the put. You have to sell. You might sell 100 put options contracts for $50 at a price of $7 per contract. You might achieve a gain of a Canadian dollar of approximately $50,000. In terms of the bear spread, you might purchase 100 call options contracts for $65, the exercise price, at a price of $0.5. and write 100 call option contracts of the exercise price of $50 for $7. This technique will help you achieve a gain of maximum $45,000 Canadian, but also a loss of 112 Canadian dollars. However, the losses and the gains are limited. The butterfly spread. You might want to purchase 100 call option contracts at $55 at a price floor of $3 and follow the next steps. This will help you achieve a minimum loss of $4,000 Canadian and a maximum gain of $40,000. I can walk you through the decision matrix and criteria at the end of the question period, and the recommendation for you would be to pursue the recommendations that we presented.
Thank you, Christiana, Catherine, and Alexandre.
Yes, concerning the fact that the company is in the industrial sector, in the Canadian industrial sector, why do you increase the Canadian equity, and why didn't you put a different weight on the industrial sector?
Well, the industrial sector was already so the industrial was overweight by 2.4%, but we see that the industrial space is going to do really well. We want to separate those two. So this is the first difference answer. The second one, as for Canadian equities. Well, because they are operating here, but they also have operations in different parts of the world, which is already, if we can say, hedging their operational risk in terms of concentration in Canada. In terms of portfolio, because the Canadian currency is very low against the U.S., for instance, we thought that the currency risk was too high to have a strong allocation to other regions in the world. That's mainly the reason.
Okay. Can you explain why you chose manager 4 over manager 2?
Okay, so manager 2 did have a better asset allocation, but his stock selection was pretty low compared to manager 4, and we do believe that because you're going with a bottom-up strategy, that it's better to have a manager who is able to pick better stocks than who's able to allocate the assets properly. Also, manager 4 did align with Mr. Normando's risk preference. He does have a low risk preference, so his volatility is low, and he has a low beta. So those are the main reasons why we chose manager 4.
And why do you think that a manager that has a bottom-up strategy is better than a manager who has a top-down strategy?
Well, because their portfolio is going to be more concentrated. That said, they're going to spend more time on selecting actual stocks. They'll get to really know the companies, and by doing this, you can mitigate a lot of risk. You can actually be able to project your returns much more accurately. So we definitely think that there's some value in bottom-up stock picking.
Throughout the presentation, you mentioned a bunch of risks, which so you kind of covered something that you never mentioned. So, what's Mr. Normando first main source of income when he retires, and how does that fit in the portfolio, in the overall investment strategy? I mean, do we have to take into account the correlation between that main source of income and the portfolio, and if so, how?
Okay. Well, he mentioned that his dividend income was covering his expenses. So that's why we did not touch the dividend yielding sector allocation. So there are sectors that yield more than others. We did not touch these much. So the level of dividend should be maintained to cover those expenses.
Okay, but you understand there's a correlation between that incoming dividend and the return on the portfolio.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
And in terms of currency risk, for example, because you talk about currency risk, you say we should move money from cash into Canada or we distribute more because there's currency risk. And have you noticed, I mean, is there some currency risk in Mr. Normando's dividend income?
Yes, there is. There is in holding Canadian equity, but since he's spending in Canada, his risk of receiving dividends in Canadian dollars is not necessarily a huge concern. As for, sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Well, I forgot.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, so is there, yeah, I mean, no, that's fine, no, I mean, you've answered the question.
Okay.
Yeah, you've answered, yeah.
Another about the hedging strategies. Why did you consider the bear spread instead of the bull spread?
Because it involves the call options, first of all, and because we are thinking that the price of the iron will decrease in the future. So we wanna take advantage of this and convert it into a profit. So you can use the cash that you can receive by pursuing a strategy in order to purchase the steel that we need for our business.
You did a good job with the hedging strategy. It was a good idea to expand. So what's the mean? So what happens when you mix put and call? So what is the ultimate goal eventually?
It's the opposite graph. So you are in case of a price increase, you have a profit that is generated, and in case of a loss, it's just the opposite graph of this.
Okay, and how does it affect your cost? Okay, now you can do it.